So we've got this incredible stack of sources in front of us, and they're all detailing what might be one of the most strategically fascinating games this season.
Absolutely. We're talking about that single game clash between the LeBreeze team, with Paige Bueckers, and the LaRose team, anchored by Chelsea Gray.
And this was a big one. This was the game that handed the Breeze, who were undefeated at the time, their very first loss.
Yeah, so for you listening, it's really tailored to dissecting that. We're not just looking at the final score. Our sources let us get like a microscopic view of the individual matchup.
And the tactical shifts, right? The little adjustments that just completely change the game.
Exactly.
So our mission today, really, is to go way beyond the conventional box score. We're trying to understand the specific and often unquantifiable nuances of a player like Lexie Hull.
The irreplaceable defensive player.
Exactly. Her impact is measured in things like opponent frustration, these game-changing hustle plays, and we're going to contrast that with the pure, just, high-volume offensive power of Chelsea Gray.
And that's the perfect conflict, isn't it? It's the classic offense versus defense story.
Totally.
But it's boiled down into this really intense 3-on-3 format. So yeah, Rose won, and Gray's scoring was a huge part of that. But the real tension, the question we have to ask is, which story is the real story?
Right. Was this victory defined by Chelsea Gray? I mean, just jaw-dropping offense.
Or was it defined by Lexie Hull's absolutely suffocating defense that just neutralized the other team's star?
I think we have to start with what the sources themselves acknowledge is, the foundational truth. If we're talking about what drove this victory, we have to begin with the woman who almost broke a league record.
Yeah, you really have no choice but to start there.
So, Section 1, the offensive engine. Let's talk about Chelsea Gray's magnet ball.
The sources, they immediately establish her as the foundation for this win. The phrase they use is, she went full magnet ball.
Yeah, I love that phrase. Let's break that down, magnet ball, because it's so descriptive. It's not just that she shot a lot.
No, not at all. It implies this total control over the offensive gravity of the entire game.
So the ball, no matter who had it or where it was, it sort of inevitably found its way back to her.
For the decisive action, whether that was her taking the shot, making the key pass, or just resetting the whole offense, it all ran through her.
The raw number is just staggering. 37 points.
To score 37 points in this format, the 3-on-3, with such concentrated possessions, she was involved in generating points at this just dizzying rate.
It's way beyond what you'd normally expect. It's just an act of pure, relentless offensive will.
And it takes incredible endurance, not just physically, but mentally, to maintain that focus.
Well, and think about the strategic implications of that. If one player scores 37 points, it completely dictates what the other team has to do on defense.
Completely.
It means the Breeze team spent the vast majority of their defensive energy just trying to solve a puzzle that, on that night, was basically unsolvable.
And that's the key analytical point the sources really drive home. We have to acknowledge this core truth of the sport. Offense is generally considered the higher driver of victory than defense.
So by that logic, Chelsea Gray's massive scoring is the foundational reason Rose won.
The defense enabled it, for sure, but the offense is what secured it.
Okay, but I have to challenge that a little bit, just based on how complex these sources are. If we just accept that offense is more important, does that mean we're just reducing it to math?
What do you mean?
Like, if the final score was, say, 10-8, and Lexie Hull's steal led to the only point in the last 5 minutes, are we still saying the 5 points Gray scored earlier are the primary reason they won? Or does the timing, the nature of the scoring matter more?
That's a great distinction, and the sources actually anticipate that. The answer they provide is stability. Gray's 37 points created a necessary floor for her team.
Okay. Every single time the Breeze managed to get a stop, or they hit a tough shot, or they put together, a little 4-0 run.
Which they tried to do.
They definitely did. But Gray was there to immediately answer. Every single time, with 2 free throws or a highly contested high-difficulty 3.
So she wasn't just scoring, she was a momentum killer.
She was nullifying their momentum.
Yeah.
And that stability, that guaranteed floor, is what makes the offense the primary driver. Without that sustained volume, all the little defensive swings we're about to talk about, they wouldn't have even mattered.
Okay, I see. So she wasn't just putting points on the board, she was maintaining the equilibrium of the game.
Yes.
She forced the Breeze defense back into the same loop over and over. They could never really get ahead. because she put a ceiling on how effective any of their defensive runs could be.
Exactly. And think about the psychological burden of that. You're on defense, you commit extra bodies, you scheme, you force a bad shot, you get the rebound, and then 2 possessions later, Gray has already negated all that effort.
It must be so demoralizing. It is. You know your best effort is barely enough to just keep pace.
And this is where her performance gets into that near legendary status for this league. She was actually chasing history that night.
Yeah, the sources make a huge deal of this. She was so dominant that if she had hit the final shot of the game, she would have broken the league's all-time single-game scoring record.
And that detail is so important because it proves this wasn't just her, chucking up bad shots. This wasn't desperation.
No, this was sustained, efficient, and history-adjacent excellence. She was operating at a level where every single conversation about the game had to begin and end with her scoring threat.
So when we talk about full magnet ball and how she controlled the tempo, what were the actual mechanics she was using? How did she maintain that control when they were throwing multiple defenders at her?
Well, it wasn't just iso ball. She was masterfully using the pick and roll to create switches.
And then exploiting the mismatch.
Every time, whether it was a size or a quickness mismatch. But the really dangerous part was her mid-range game and her ability to draw fouls in traffic.
So even when they collapsed on her, she'd find a way.
Exactly. And when the defense did commit, like trying to double team her, she showed incredible court vision. She'd find Azar Stevens or Lexie Hall in the corners for open looks.
So the assists she got were a direct result of the threat of her own scoring.
Yes. She didn't just score 37 points, she fundamentally broke the geometry of the defense.
So she didn't get the record in the end, but her performance really solidified Rose as this elite offensive engine. But an engine that needed something else to get them over the finish line.
Correct. The victory was on the back of Gray's engine, but for that engine to actually outrun the breeze, they needed a tactical weapon that could completely neutralize the other team's engine.
Paige Bueckers.
Paige Bueckers.
And that leads us right to her, the opposing star, whose night was just, a story of 2 completely different halves.
Yeah, if Chelsea Gray's night was about defining a victory, Paige Bueckers' night was this perfect strategic case study in how you can suppress elite talent.
And on paper, her final numbers look incredible. 15 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists.
She was on triple-double watch. In this fast-paced format, that is a testament to just how engaged she was across the entire court.
Being on triple-double watch in this league is a huge deal. It means you're involved in almost every single play, offense, defense.
Grabbing boards, initiating the offense, still getting your points. It shows incredible versatility.
But the sources are very clear that this raw stat line, it hides a pretty critical story.
A huge internal tension. You have to analyze when she got those stats, and more importantly, who she was getting them against.
And the sources are definitive on this. Almost all of her productive scoring happened when she was matched up against one player, Shu Sutton.
This is that specific matchup exploitation that really defined the first part of the game for her.
Anytime Paige saw Sutton on the floor, it was just an immediate green light. The sources even described her thought process as, I'm getting mine, I'm going in.
They said she was absolutely cooking her.
Cooking, and that term in basketball, it implies this decisive, aggressive one-on-one advantage.
Yeah, where the defender just can't keep up. Paige was using her high basketball IQ, her craftiness, all of it, to just score at will against that specific assignment.
So she was operating at peak confidence.
For a time. But the seeds of the Breeze's eventual collapse are actually right there in Paige's initial stats, specifically her turnovers.
Right. She started the game with a really unfavorable ratio. 5 assists to 4 turnovers.
And that high turnover rate, it suggests she was taking risks, maybe forcing passes.
Or just being a little too aggressive.
And that's a flashing red light. A high usage player will have some turnovers, sure, but 4 turnovers to 5 assists is just unsustainable for your main playmaker. And that is the moment the whole narrative of her game flips.
Because what happens next is the most critical inflection point. That's statistical correction.
That's dramatic.
By the end of the game, her ratio improved massively. She finished the latter stages with 4 assists and, here's the key, 0 turnovers.
That sudden shift, going from nearly a turnover for every assist to 0 turnovers during the most high-leverage part of the game, that tells you a story.
So either Paige suddenly had this epiphany and became the most careful passer on the planet,
or the environment she was playing in changed drastically.
Yeah, and given what we're talking about, the latter seems overwhelmingly likely.
Her turnover problem didn't just disappear because she got better. It disappeared because the defense she was facing became so unforgiving that she stopped taking any risks at all.
She went into survival mode.
It's the ultimate litmus test of defensive pressure. When a playmaker's turnovers suddenly stop, it usually means they stopped trying to make plays.
They stopped forcing passes, stopped looking for those tough reads.
And they just started prioritizing holding onto the ball. And this exact moment of transition, this is where we have to introduce the defensive anchor.
This is what the sources call the damn moment.
Yeah, I love this reference.
It's so perfect. They use that specific LeBron James meme where he's on the bench and he sees Kawhi Leonard check back into the game, and his whole expression just changes to this look of dread.
Damn.
And that analogy just perfectly captures the emotional and tactical shift Paige must have felt the second Lexie Hull stepped back on the court.
It was that immediate realization that the easy offense, the cooking she was doing against Sutton, that was over. The game had just fundamentally changed.
And the sources explicitly connect her high turnover rate at the start of the game to Lexie Hull's presence. Those first 4 turnovers were all symptoms of trying to operate against Lexie defense.
And the moment Lexie left the floor, Paige got easy looks against Sutton. The moment Lexie came back, the engine just seized up.
The contrast is so stark you can't deny it. Hull's value isn't just in the points she prevents, it's in the instability she creates in the other team's entire offensive structure.
And that shift from high-risk, high-reward play to that ultra-conservative zero-turnover play, that is the clearest measure of the psychological pressure that Lexie Hull was inflicting.
It proved that if Rose was going to win this thing, they needed Lexie to completely change the weather for the opposing star.
So yeah, we've established the context. Gray provided the offensive floor, the necessity. But Hull provided the tactical advantage that sealed the deal.
So let's make her our central focus. Let's go to Hull Island.
Yes. Lexie Hull is the specific, irreplaceable subject of this deep dive. And she's not just a great defender. The sources call her the unbelievable stopper.
And even more specifically, the WNBA's best guard defensive playmaker.
Exactly. We are officially entering Hull Island.
And that title, best guard defensive playmaker, is so important. It moves her beyond just standard defensive stats. A stopper, they prevent scoring.
But a playmaker generates advantage. And for Lexie, she generates offense from her defense, mostly by creating these chaotic turnovers that lead to easy transition points for her team.
So let's get into the specifics of why she's the perfect defensive answer for someone like Paige Bueckers.
The sources explain it really well. Lexie can guard Paige precisely because Paige's game is built on craftiness, on manipulation, using screens.
Right.
It's not built on just raw, blazing speed.
And that's a key technical point. The sources admit that Lexie Hull struggles more with the Ryan Howards of the world.
The pure speed demons.
Or with significantly bigger post players. But Paige is brilliant. She uses anticipation and deception to beat you. And Lexie's whole game is about countering that deception with superior mental speed and positioning.
It's a battle of basketball IQs, of angles.
Totally.
Her footwork, her timing, it's all designed to neutralize that manipulation. So when Paige runs off a screen trying to get her defender caught up,
Lexie isn't just going over or under it like a normal defender.
No, she is anticipating the outcome of the screen. She's reading where Paige wants to go next, and she's positioning herself to be there already.
So she's taking these little anticipatory steps that let her recover faster than Paige can even see the gap opening up.
She's basically neutralizing the screen by refusing to respect the screen setter. She's reading the offensive player's eyes, their hips, before the play even develops.
Incredible.
And the sources detail these specific disruptive actions that let her put Paige in hell, as they say.
Right.
Look at how she plays against a blitz or a double team. So Rose would send extra help at Paige, which in theory should leave an open passing lane for the Breeze to exploit.
But Lexie's recovery speed is just instantaneous. She doesn't fully commit her body to that initial blitz.
She baits the pass, but she stays balanced, keeping her eyes on both the ball handler and the intended target.
And here's the genius part the sources point out. She would then steal the ball after she recovered from the blitz.
Which is insane. The defense just executed a high-risk play, the blitz, and instead of the offense exploiting the open space,
Lexie recovers and then immediately turns that possession into a Rose fast break.
It's this 2-stage high IQ disruption that almost no one else can do. It's the highest form of risk management. The defense gambles, and Lexie is the insurance policy that cleans everything up.
And then you have the micro moments. The sources talk about her tipping the ball away as soon as Paige turned around.
It's like a predatory sense of timing. It's relentless pressure. So Paige thinks she has a split second to collect herself, maybe shield the ball.
And Lexie's already there, with her length, just dismantling the play before it can even start.
And that relentless pressure leads directly to the mental impact, which the sources describe with some very evocative language.
Yeah, they say Lexie Hull forces players, even stars like Paige Bueckers, to second-guess every pass they throw.
And every screen they come off.
And that, right there, is the core of her defensive value. It's the invisible layer.
It's not just the 4 turnovers she officially caused, it's the 10 passes that were never thrown.
The 5 driving lanes that were immediately abandoned. It's the constant mental tax of having to operate under that much duress.
The hyperbole they use, saying Paige was getting PTSD from turning around and seeing Lexie.
Or that Lexie was putting Paige in hell.
It's all meant to convey that complete psychological siege.
I mean, if you're getting PTSD just from seeing your defender, it means you know that any momentary lapse, any tiny fraction of a second of indecision is going to be a disaster.
It forces you into this state of hypervigilance, and that just slows down the decision-making for the entire offense.
Which brings us to this amazing comparison they make for her style of play.
The Grand Theft Alvarado comparison?
Yes, but with a twist. They say Lexie is the equivalent if Alvarado were 6'8".
Which is a terrifying thought. Jose Alvarado is known for those opportunistic, sneaky, chaotic steals. He's pure havoc.
But he relies on quickness and guile.
And Lexie does all of that, but with the added advantage of significant size and length. So you take Alvarado's chaos and you add a physical dimension to it.
It's almost an unsolvable problem on the perimeter.
Yeah, it really underscores her unique blend of skills. The hustle, the high defensive IQ, the disruptive timing. She's not just sticking to her assignment. She's an existential threat to the other team's possession.
Which makes her that unbelievable stopper who wins the mental battle before the physical one even really starts.
And now that we've established just how devastatingly effective she is, that leads us right into the great paradox of player valuation.
Because a player this brilliant on defense almost always comes with some significant liabilities on the other end. And this is where the deep dive has to shift, right? From the tactical on the court to the strategic front office valuation.
Exactly.
Lexie Hull is described as irreplaceable. Her little things, the dives, the hustle plays, it can't be replicated.
But at the same time, the sources say she's a player you can't offer a max contract.
And that is the Lexie Hull paradox. We have to define that for you, the listener.
It's this ultimate tension between intangible, high-leverage impact and quantifiable, season-long efficiency. And we have to be honest about her offensive deficit, just like the sources are.
Yeah, they don't pull any punches. They say she was horrendous from 3 in this specific game.
And more broadly, her offense is described as an acknowledged net negative.
Meaning, in games where her defensive hustle doesn't create these massive swings, her offense is actually hurting the team.
That term net negative is just brutal for a pro athlete. It means statistically, over a long season, her shot selection and her misses are a drag on the team's overall offensive rating.
And it lets the other team hide their weakest defender on her. If she can't make them pay by hitting open threes, it just breaks the floor spacing for Chelsea Gray.
It's an opportunity cost problem. Every possession that ends with a bad Lexie Hull shot is a possession that wasn't used by Chelsea Gray or another elite scorer.
The team has to constantly work to compensate for that limitation.
However, and this is a huge shifting, the sources immediately pivot. They contrast the statistical liability with the single most important offensive moment of the entire game.
Lexie Hull hit the biggest shot of the game.
The game winner.
The ultimate redemption. The player they just called horrendous from 3 steps up and sinks the game-clinching shot.
And that proves she has the mental fortitude to deliver when the stakes are at their absolute highest, and that significantly elevates her value in those high-leverage playoff-type situations.
Which is why she is such a tough player to evaluate. How do you weigh constant offensive liability across a whole season against defensive genius and clutch shooting in the biggest moments?
The sources offer a framework for this. They define 2 different types of value for her. her impact, what they call her game-by-game value, and her playoff value.
Is considered significantly greater than her total value over the course of an entire regular season.
Let's use an analogy from the critique. Think of her like a specialized closer in baseball or a penalty kill specialist in hockey.
Okay.
You're not paying that player for their cumulative stats over 162 games. You're paying them for their ability to neutralize the opponent in the single highest leverage situation of the game.
A regular season rewards consistency, efficiency. But in the playoffs, everything tightens up, the pace slows down, and every single possession becomes critical.
And in that environment, a guaranteed stop and the ability to create turnovers, which is what Lexie provides, that becomes infinitely more valuable than just another marginal offensive contributor.
Her disruptive style is built for the pressure cooker.
So you're basically taking a financial risk. You're betting that her game-by-game defensive brilliance will always outweigh that consistent, season-long offensive drag.
That's an aggressive way to build a roster.
Very. But it's defensible if your goal is a championship where you know you'll have to neutralize an opposing star to win it all.
And this leads right to the contract worry that the sources bring up. The host says he fears a team will be dumb enough to offer her a max contract.
And that's not disrespect. It's a strategic commentary on the salary cap.
Right. You're paying for scarcity, not necessarily total production. You can find other scorers. You cannot easily find another guard defensive playmaker who can do what she does.
That scarcity drives the price up. The tension is, are you paying for the irreplaceable role or the total season-long production?
And if you pay a max for her role, you might not have enough cap space left to find the offensive firepower you need to compensate for her net negative on that end.
The sources mention Sophie Cunningham is in a similar spot. Elite role players who risk getting paid based on their peak moments, and then they become unaffordable.
So the decision for a GM is fundamental. Do you give a max contract to a player who guarantees you won't lose because of the opponent's offense?
Or to a player who guarantees you'll win because of their own high-volume offense? Lexie Hull is the definitive answer to the first one. She prevents losses by shutting down the other team's best weapon.
And to really understand that value, we need to move beyond the abstract and look at tangible on-court proof of how her defense translates directly to points for rows.
So we've been calling Lexie Hull a defensive playmaker, meaning she generates offense out of defense. The sources give us this perfect, detailed sequence that absolutely validates that title.
The 6-point swing sequence.
Yes. And this moment shows exactly how hustle, timing, and defensive IQ directly change the numbers on the scoreboard.
Okay, let's break this down piece by piece because it happens so fast and it's all because of her relentless effort.
It starts with a Rose offensive miss, a failed possession.
So momentum should be shifting to the Breeze. They get the stop, they should get the ball back and set up their offense.
But Lexie Hull intervenes immediately. She gets the offensive rebound. That's hustle point number one. She just completely reversed a defensive success for the opponent.
She turns a 0-point possession into a live ball.
Then she immediately kicks it out to Azar Stevens, who hits a 3.
So that's a 3-point swing that should have been 0. That is just pure, raw hustle, converting a failure into a huge success.
But she's not done. She's not resting. The Breeze have to inbound the ball now, probably trying to just calm things down, stop the bleeding.
And this is where her defensive IQ kicks in.
Lexie Hull immediately gets a steal on the far end of the court. She probably read the entry pass or just caught the ball handler sleeping for a split second.
It's pure opportunistic playmaking, anticipating the chaos.
And she converts that second turnover into immediate offense. She pushes the ball up the court, kicks it out to Chelsea Gray, who's already spotted up.
And Gray sinks the 3.
So in what, maybe 30 seconds of game clock, we went from a Rose miss to a 6-point swing.
A 3-0-3 sequence. The entire strategic and emotional shift was all initiated, fueled, and executed by Lexie Hull's hustle and her predatory defense.
She single-handedly created 6 points out of 2 possessions that should have yielded 0 for her team and maybe 2 for the other team. It perfectly illustrates why she's a defensive playmaker.
She's not just getting conventional steals. She's capitalizing on everything, generating these high-reward transition scenarios that lead to the best shot in the game.
The open transition 3.
And this specific sequence, this is what justifies Coach Nola Henry's decisions. The sources note that Henry often plays Lexie over a more conventional double-big lineup.
It proves that Henry prioritizes Lexie's unique disruptive value over traditional size. In this league, the ability to generate a quick 6 points from nothing is more valuable than the small advantage you might get from playing 2 bigs.
Henry sees that her chaotic style is basically a cheat code for momentum.
And that brings us to the external validation. The sources reference this viral discussion on podcasts and social media where experts were openly doubting her.
Yeah, they're questioning if Lexie Hull could even guard Paige Bueckers.
It's vital context. There was clear professional noise. Analysts on the Dunker Spot podcast, for instance, saying Lexie had no chance of guarding Paige.
And then there was this humbling silence that followed the game.
Once they saw what happened, Lexie Hull showed up and delivered a masterclass that just silenced all that doubt immediately and definitively.
The source material seems to really enjoy the fact that traditional analysis, which relies on easily measurable stats, completely missed the value of a player like her.
It just reinforces the whole theme of this deep dive. Lexie Hull's impact requires subjective evaluation and appreciation for the unquantifiable. She made the doubters look foolish.
She showed that high-level craftiness and timing can completely neutralize elite offensive skill as long as you have the size and the mental tenacity to go with it.
And circling back to Paige's turnovers, going from 4 to 0 in the late game, it just confirms that Lexie's presence was so psychologically overbearing that Paige just stopped trying to be a playmaker against her.
I'm just trying to survive the possession.
Which is the ultimate success for Hull Island. Her value is generating offense for her team through her defense. It was the perfect expression of her role, and against Paige Bueckers, it was executed with a perfection that just overrides any other liability.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. What have we learned from this deep dive into the Rose versus Breeze game?
I think the Rose victory was just a phenomenal study in complementary excellence. It needed 2 different but equally high-level performances to happen.
You had the high-volume, record-chasing offense from Chelsea Gray. That was the absolute necessary foundation.
And that was paired perfectly with the unconventional, mentally devastating defensive performance from Lexie Hull. That was the tactical key that shut down the other team's engine and forced them into survival mode.
The sources really drive home this key takeaway about players like Lexie Hull.
Yeah.
Their real value is basically impossible to capture in a traditional box score.
Right. It's not just in points or steals, it's in the subtle stuff. Forcing hesitation, causing second guesses, creating those chaotic, opportune turnovers.
And ultimately, just winning the mental war against the other team's most important player.
She is the living proof of how defense can become a psychological weapon when the other team's star player feels that dread, that PTSD of seeing Lexie Hull recovering faster than they thought possible.
That's a level of defensive impact that stats just can't measure, but it's what translates directly to winning when the stakes are highest.
And that's why the sources make such a strong case that players like her are irreplaceable. What they do is fundamentally unique.
They deliver the hustle, the high IQ defensive pressure that you can't just coach into an average role player. They're the defensive X factor you need for a championship run.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the learner, as you think about player value and team building.
So imagine you're a general manager, and you have to choose between 2 players. One guarantees you 30 points of reliable volume offense.
And the other guarantees you, say, 15 points worth of defense and hustle. They'll completely neutralize the opponent's star and generate those opportunistic swings we talked about.
Which player offers more stability? Which one gives you a more certain path to victory in a high-stakes playoff environment?
It forces you to ask a really tough question about risk. How much financial and offensive risk are you willing to take on your own side of the ball?
To secure that unparalleled, game-changing reward of a defense that literally puts your opponents in hell.
And how does valuing that hidden, unquantifiable skill truly translate into the ultimate measure of success?